Hello lovelies and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Christina and I make videos about anything I feel like, but especially books and family life and I guess lifestyle. Consistently inconsistent in what I post and when I post. That is the honesty of the channel right now, but today we are doing a reading wrap-up, which I haven't done in a really long time because I've read so little, but for January I actually read a few books. So for once, I can actually talk about them. I have my phone here with my notes because I'm forgetful as hell these days. Let's get into the books. I'm not gonna have a big stack of books to hold up because most of these books I either listened to on audiobook or I read them on my Kindle. So we're gonna start off with the first book that was actually a Christmas read, a Christmas horror book that I mentioned in my Christmas horror video that I did in late December. And that is Snowball, a Christmas horror story by Gonzalez. And Snowball, oh my goodness, this is creepy. I'm gonna put my phone down so I don't fiddle with it. So this is a story about a family, husband and wife and two kids and a dog. And the wife of the family brings home this vintage, creepy looking elf on the shelf thing for like a fun activity for the family over the Christmas time. And then just weird things start to happen. Weird, creepy, horrendous things start to happen to this poor family, and the man of the family, he feels like he's like the only one who sees all these weird things, and he starts wondering if he's going crazy. It's so creepy and really well written. It's not a long book. It took me a while to read it, but that's not the book's fault. That's just me being a slow reader these days. But man, it was so creepy. So creepy, so dark. I loved it. Really good Christmas horror story. So if you're looking for that any time of the year, or you're gonna add it to your list for next Christmas for horror stories, I would definitely recommend adding this one. The next book on my list is one that I mentioned in my latest book haul, and that is the Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. Love John Scalzi. I've talked about him many times and his books on this channel. This one is no exception. It is so good. It's more of a light-hearted, well, the theme isn't as light-hearted, but the book is a very light read. It is a sci-fi story about Kaijus. It's hard to say anything without spoiling it. I read the back on it in my book haul. I think I'm gonna do the same thing now so I don't spoil anything. It says they're big, they're bad, but they're about to be extinct. Jamie's dream was to hit the big time at a tech startup. Jamie's reality is a humiliating layoff, then a low-wage job delivering takeout. Things look beyond grim until a chance delivery to an old acquaintance. Tom has a vacancy on his team. The pay is great, and Jamie has debts. It's an easy choice to make, but Tom's animal rights organization is way more than it seems. In an alternate dimension, massive dinosaur-like creatures roam a tropical world, but they need support to survive, and the Kaiju Preservation Society wants to help. However, others wants to profit. Unless they're stopped, the walls between worlds could fall and millions could die. So there you have the gist of the story. It is so well written. As always, John Scalzi just has this very playful, interesting way of writing stories where you have characters that are funny and lighthearted, but also has depth. And I think it's the same for this book, where at the same time as I was on the edge of my seat wanting to know what's going to happen, I'm also kind of laughing along with some of the characters and what they're saying and their dialogue, and it just feels very real and funny, but also like dark, and just, it's wonderful. If you like sci-fi, you like dinosaur kaiju kind of theme, definitely check this out. The next book on my list here is a Stephen King novel, and that is Needful Things. So this story is set in Castle Rock, Maine, where Mr. Gaunt opens up this weird curiosity shop that has something for everyone at a very interesting price, very low price for many, but it also comes with a catch, and that catch is that they usually have to do a prank on someone else in this town, and then we get to see the domino effect that happens when these pranks are played out. it gets dark, it gets twisted. It's a really dark and interesting novel. I really like Stephen King's Castle Rock stories, where you have a lot of Easter eggs. He mentions a lot of his other books. He does this in other books as well. Actually, most of his books mentions other books, but I really like the ones that play out in Castlemaine. Sorry, that is really reflective. I'm gonna put it down. I'm gonna shield this in a little bit. There, that's better. So this one is no exception. It is really dark. It has all of these characters, and for some Stephen King novels, when he chooses to have a lot of characters, it gets too much. I felt a little bit of that for Needful Things, where at times I wouldn't say I was confused, but I had to use a bit of extra brain power to kind of keep track of everyone and who everyone was and what kind of relation they had to each other. But there are like a small set of main characters that we follow mostly, and I really liked those characters. Even the unlovable ones, I liked reading about them. It's like the love to hate kind of things with some of the characters that Stephen King writes, but I really enjoyed Needful Things. I felt that it was a tad too long than what it needed to be, but it was still a really good read and I really enjoyed it. The next book that I read was one for my Exploring Erotica project, so I'm not going to go very much into detail about this book here in this wrap-up because that's going to be in the next Exploring Erotica episode instead. Okay, so the next book that I read in January was Dirty Little Secret. This is the first book in the Forbidden Desires trilogy by Kendall Ryan. I'm not going to say much about it because, like I said, I'm going to mention more details about this in my Exploring Erotica project. I can say that I did not like it. It had a lot of those tropes in erotica novels that I just don't like. I know a lot of people do, but I don't, and I will get more into that in my next Exploring Erotica project episode, but I didn't like it. Let's move on. The next book, it's actually two books in the same series, and that is Wayward, which is the second book in the Wayward Pines trilogy, and The Last Town, which is the third book in the Wayward Pines trilogy by Blake Crouch. Blake Crouch is also a sci-fi author that I have mentioned several times on this channel, and I absolutely love his writing, and Wayward Pines is such a good trilogy. Holy moly. Okay, I'm gonna read you the synopsis because I have read all three books and I don't want to spoil anything, and it's hard for me to keep track on what happens in which book. So to make sure that I don't spoil you, I'm gonna read what it says. It says, Wayward Pines, Idaho is quintessential small town America, or so it seems. Secret Service agent Ethan Burke arrives in search of two missing federal agents, yet soon is facing much more than he bargained for. After a violent accident lands him in the hospital, Ethan comes to with no ID and no cell phone. The medical staff seems friendly enough, but sometimes feels off. As days pass, Ethan's investigation into his colleague's disappearance turns up more questions than answers. Why can't he make contact with his family in the outside world? Why doesn't anyone believe he's who he says he is? And what's the purpose of the electrified fences encircling the town? Are they keeping the residents in or something else out? Each step toward the truth takes Ethan further from the world he knows until he must face a horrifying fact. He may never get out of Wayward Pines alive. So if that doesn't take a hold of you and grab you and make you want to read it, then I don't know what. It is such an edge of your seat kind of story. I'm sorry about the sun coming in and being really bright, but we're just gonna go with it. But the story of Ethan Burke and him trying to figure out this mystery of where he is, why he is there, what is happening, it is edge of your seat exciting, and I highly recommend it. The first one I liked but didn't love, but I was intrigued enough that I wanted to know what happened next, but it took me a little while from the first one until I picked up the second one. And at the second book, I absolutely was hooked and fell in love, and I listened to the second one, and then right after I finished the second one, I started on the third one. And it's so, so good. I have mixed feelings about the ending. Not that it isn't good, but it's yeah, yeah, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I have a little bit of mixed feelings about the ending, even though it was a good ending. And then the last book I read in the month of January was The Perfect Marriage by Jeneva Rose. This is the story told from two perspectives where there's a husband and a wife. The husband is having an affair, and then the mistress turns up dead, and the husband is accused of murdering her, and the wife, who is a very acclaimed defense attorney, she chooses to represent him in his case. I don't know what to say about this book without spoiling it, because my feelings about this book is very much tied to how the story wraps up, but I'm gonna say that I like the writing style. I like that we got from both perspectives of the husband and the wife. I like the way that the story was written up until pretty much the end. So I'm gonna tell you why I didn't like it. I'm gonna put a mute caption here for the duration of the time that I'm spoiling the book, so that if you don't want to get spoiled, mute right now, and then I'm gonna remove it and put unmute when you can bring the sound back on. Or you can listen and be spoiled, and maybe I'll spare you of reading a book that you won't like. So, okay. The reason why I did not like this book is because of the ending. The story was well written, the story was good enough and everything, but the ending result of the whole thing is that the husband ends up on death row, and he is accused of this murder that he did not do. And then we find out that it was actually the wife, the attorney, that murdered his mistress to kind of get back at him. The issue that I have with this is that the whole book is told from first-person perspective from both sides. And it just seems very unlikely to me, very unrealistic, that we would have all of these conflicting thoughts about her husband, and could he have done this, could he have blah blah blah, and then talking negatively about this colleague that actually turns out to be her next husband. And it just seems so very unrealistic to get all of that negative and weird first person thoughts if she was actually the real killer. It just doesn't make sense. If we were to have seen the whole story played out in third person, where we only got to see, or we only got to hear what she was actually saying, what was portrayed from the outside, and maybe just first person from the husband, that would make more sense. But to me, the whole story kind of unraveled with that ending, and it felt just a bit off. And unfortunately, that kind of ruined the whole book for me. It was an interesting experience up until that point. Some things were really obvious, some things were not, but I just ended up not liking it because of the unrealistic aspect of that being the end result of the whole thing. So there! Now you can unmute and you can listen on without being spoiled if you muted me for that period of time. So that is it. Those are the books that I read in the month of January. I will link them all in the description down below so you can go check them out if you want to. And let me know in the comments what you've been reading lately and what has been your favorite read of the year so far. I would love to know. With that, I'm going to say thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And I will see you in another video soon. Goodbye!